It's a grey Sunday morning and I'm wearing my patches from Chanel, which my friend kinda gave me. I normally don't wear patches from Chanel, so this makes me feel kind of special. I've recently been waking up really anxious and I just found that reading short stories has been really helpful. There's something about reading in your mother tongue which is not at all like reading in other languages. I'm only reading in English and Russian, so it's not like I'm reading in a ton of languages. However, your mother tongue, the language that you speak with your parents, the language that you've been taught at school, the language you've wrote your essays and compositions in, something about it touches the soul in a totally different way. If you're lucky enough to be able to read in two languages and haven't read in a while in your mother tongue, I highly suggest you do that because this is really soothing and calming. I'm reading short stories by Vladimir Nabokov. I read The Gift last year. It's his last Russian novel before he started writing in English and then moved to the United States and truly became an American writer. I don't think that many people understand, because his last name sounds so Slavic, that he actually moved to the United States and started writing and publishing in English. For example, the notorious Lolita was published and written in English in the first place. I just think that there is not really anyone like him anymore. A lot of other Russian writers in exile continue to write in Russian, sometimes stopped writing, sometimes never really found their voice again, but Nabokov did. This short stories collection contains all of his short stories, so both the ones he wrote in Russian in his early exile years and then the ones he wrote in English already living in the United States in like 50s and 60s. They are translated into Russian though, and I'm not sure if I'm going to read those because I don't know if he was the one who translated them or his son. I'm really enjoying it. Highly recommend. I think short stories are very underrated. His short stories are usually very sad and tragic, and also often contain very surprising plot twists. He's such an interesting author. By the way, another thing that really helps me with my anxiety is journaling, which I've been doing ever since I was a kid really, and meditating. I've been meditating almost every day for almost a year now, and I can say that, well, I guess on some days it helps more than on others, but at the end of the day, your habits and your rituals and the beauty of them is that you just do them every day regardless. And yeah. Let's talk about the books that I've read recently. And the first book that I want to start with is Invisible Men by Ralph Ellison, which I genuinely think should be required reading, especially if you live in the United States. It follows a young black man from American South who is smart, he knows his worth, he is hardworking, he thinks that if he does the right thing and does his best, then he will be seen for who he really is. He'll be able to play a socially important role, he'll be able to do amazing things with his life, but clearly life is different. He then finds himself in 1950s Harlem, where the civil rights movement is picking up. He thinks that maybe being here, right in the epicenter of all of the social, political events, he'll be able to do something meaningful. But again, life is different. Throughout the entire book, he's asking the question of whether he can be truly free and be seen for who he really is as a black man in America. The way this novel is written is like nothing I've read before. It's sort of feverish, but at the same time really coherent, and it's almost 600 pages, but I genuinely couldn't put it down. Ralph Ellison is just genius. Let me tell you that. There are just so many powerful fragments of this book that I kind of want to memorize by heart, but to give you an idea, let me read you the first paragraph. I am an invisible man. No, I'm not a spook like those who haunted Edgar Allan Poe, nor am I one of your Hollywood movie ectoplasms. I'm a man of substance, of flesh and bone, fiber and liquids, and I might even be said to possess a mind. I am invisible, understand, simply because people refuse to see me. Like the bodiless heads you see sometimes in circus sideshows, It is as though I have been surrounded by mirrors of hard, distorting glass. When they approach me, they see only my surroundings, themselves, or figments of their imagination. Indeed, everything and anything except me. A required read. I promise you will not be disappointed. Next book I want to discuss is Madame Bovary, which I think I said I have a book club meeting for. I signed up for a book club with McNally & Jackson in February. However, I got sick, which was such a disappointment for me because I never get sick. And then for the day that I got a book club meeting, I got sick. But anyway, who needs a book club when I have you guys? Madame Bovary didn't like, but respect. Let me explain. I didn't like the novel because I think that I'm an emotional reader and it was really hard for me to feel any compassion for the characters within this novel. They're all very disgusting people. I also didn't like the way that the main character, Emma Bovary, is portrayed by Flaubert. I think that he was mocking her and I didn't understand whether she really deserves that, despite she was also kind of a disgusting person. In case you don't know, Madame Bovary is one of the most iconic adultery novels alongside Anechoum. It follows a woman who is married to a provincial doctor in rural France, but she's very unsatisfied with her life and she seeks for satisfaction in affairs, but doesn't find any. No spoilers. Well, apparently Flaubert didn't care about the plot himself either. Instead, he wanted to create a structurally perfect novel. He wanted to take something as trivial as provincial drama and create an absolutely spotless literary piece out of it. And I guess given the place of Madame Bovary in world literature, he succeeded. As you can see, the novel is pretty compact, but the world within it is actually very dense and you get to know the characters very well. The structure of the chapters, the way they flow organically one into the other, and the way that Flaubert is constantly zooming out to show us the social landscape of rural France, but then zooming in into the inner world of the characters, knowing them so well, similarly to how Tolstoy does it in War and Peace and Anna Karenina, where he also is like this god inside his novel where he knows about everything that's going on in the heads and hearts of his characters. I think that I can respect Flaubert for what he did. I think that it's a very well-written novel, but that's sad because it doesn't really resonate emotionally with me. I can't say I loved it. I will also say that every time I read something like this about authors or books, I really regret that I don't have a literary degree. Maybe someday. Next book I want to talk about is Taiwan Travelogue, and it's kind of time sensitive because I'm at page 91. So I've read 4 chapters and I want to DNF it and I need to know if I should. Now, it was longlisted for the International Booker Prize. I originally picked it up this fall in Brooklyn Book Festival. However, I somehow never really got to it. I actually remember that I started, but there were so many of these, how do you call this in English? Like explanations of Taiwanese and Japanese stuff. Well, mostly Taiwanese. And I just thought that it's really boring. I don't know. Something about it was repelling. And then obviously, as it was longlisted for the International Booker Prize, I decided to give it another chance. Actually, let me explain what the book is about. It's about this Japanese writer who comes to Taiwan in late 30s, which is right before the World War II, when Taiwan was occupied by Japan. And there she has this local interpreter, also a woman. And there's this interesting power dynamic in their relationship because of the colonial aspect of it. And I expected something powerful yet subtle about these 2 women as their relationship evolves, but at the same time, there's this power dynamic again. However, 80% of the book is just food. When I'm saying this out loud, I feel like people will not understand, but literally every single page is filled with meal after meal, dish after dish, descriptions of food, Taiwanese dishes, Taiwanese produce. I just think that it's very boring. This gives comforting Japanese novels like bookshop, coffee shop, do you know what I mean? This is not at all what I expected, and I understand that it's my problem. However, it's just not working for me, and I wonder if I should persevere, if at some point this food obsession will become something else. But for now, I'm thinking of DNFing it. Every time I try to read something that's been longlisted, shortlisted, or even a winner of the International Booker Prize, I'm ending up very disappointed, despite the original premise of the novel is usually very interesting for me. I don't know what that is. Does anyone else relate? I've had 2 other translated literary fiction disappointing experiences in the last few weeks. One is Tangerinn. I was lured by the cover. Also, the publisher, Europa Editions. How's it called? Well, the one that published My Brilliant Friend
and it was really promising because it had immigration, displacement, and complicated father-daughter relationship in it, and I was really excited to give it a try. I also haven't seen anyone talk about it, so I thought that this might be my little discovery. Oh wait, also at the beginning, I actually really liked it because it's addressed to Yu, who is the father of the narrator, and it worked as a kind of powerful literary device, I'm not going to lie. However, the novel very quickly progressed into something very conventional. I don't even know how to explain this. It didn't necessarily become romance. Also, I haven't read romance in like years and years, so I have no idea what romance is these days. However, it felt like a genre novel. Like the first book I ever read in English was The Fault in Our Stars. I remember I was 13, and I don't even know where I got the English physical copy in Russia of The Fault in Our Stars, but I read it and I absolutely loved it, of course. But I'm not 13 anymore, and I don't know. Something about Tangerinn was just very John Green-esque. But I'm curious if anyone else has read it and had a different take on it. And then the other book that I read and didn't like was The Ice Palace. It's a Norwegian classic, and I really wanted to read a Norwegian book after I've watched the 2 movies by a Norwegian director whose name I forget right now, but it's Sentimental Value and The Worst Person in the World, I think. It's about these 2 schoolgirls who become friends, but then one girl disappears, and we get to follow the inner journey of the second girl as she overcomes this loss. And something about this book was just too abstract for me. I don't know how to explain this, but every time I read a book where pretty realistic events are described, but at the same time you realize that there's something else that the author is trying to say, but you just can't get it. It's like slipping away. I don't know. Something about lyrical, poetry-like fiction is just not my cup of tea, so I didn't enjoy it. However, I know that a lot of people really like it. I will say that the descriptions of ice and winter were really beautiful. I wonder what it's like to read that in the original in Norwegian, because I think that northern languages should have a lot of interesting words and phrases when it comes to describing snow. As you can see, after Invisible Man, I was pretty much on a roll with disappointing reading experiences. I will say this though, I think that well, sometimes DNF is the solution, because life is too short to read books that you don't enjoy, to struggle through reading something that doesn't work for you at this given moment. However, I also think that sometimes reading books that you don't necessarily like sharpens and refines your literary taste, and also gives you a bit more insight into your own inner world as to why you like or dislike certain things. I also think that the books I don't like sometimes create most interesting discussions. I don't have that many people to discuss books in my life with, unfortunately, but I do have you, so please discuss these books with me. The reason why I think is because if you don't like a book, you are not emotionally attached to it, and you are more likely to be able to analyze and dissect it with a more of an analytical side of your brain, which allows you to interact with the text on a deeper level, on a different dimension. Do you know what I mean? All that said, I'm happy to announce that I've finally written a book that I'm really loving. It's called A Very Cold Winter by Fausta Cialente. I believe it's the first translation of her work, or maybe the specific novel, published by Transit Books, a publishing house that I really love. It follows an extended family in post-World War II Milan as they have to share this tiny little flat all together in the ruins of post-war Italy. I really enjoy the polyphony of all the voices of all of these family members as each of them goes through their own internal struggle, and also the juxtaposition of individual and collective national trauma of a country post-war, especially when the country wasn't necessarily right in this war. As we all know, Italy wasn't. So if you see this book, I really recommend to give it a try. I think that I want to read more of Italian post-war literature. I've recently read Natalia Ginzburg's novellas for the first time, and I thought her writing was exquisite. I want to read more of her work. If you have any other post-war Italy writer recommendations, I am listening. Before I stop recording, can I just say thank you for listening to me talk about books? This makes me very happy. Thank you for sharing this joy with me.